In 1938, during the Japanese occupation of Korea, a teenage girl named Shizuko travels with her stepmother to a secluded girls' boarding school that also functions as a sanatorium. The trip is quiet and tense. Shizuko looks out the window at the passing countryside, still weak from a long-term illness. Her stepmother, sitting beside her, speaks in a polite but distant tone. She explains that the school is not only for education, but also for restoring the health of sickly girls through special care, diet, and treatment. Privately, her stepmother's mind is elsewhere. After leaving Shizuko at the school, she plans to travel to Tokyo to join her husband. This arrangement will free her from the responsibility of caring for her husband's daughter. When they arrive, the main gate swings open to reveal a large, old building surrounded by tall trees. The principal greets them with a warm smile, bowing slightly as she assures Shizuko that she will soon regain her strength. She speaks with confidence about the school's ability to heal and educate its students. Once Shizuko's stepmother departs, the principal escorts her to the counselor's office for an orientation. The counselor immediately begins inspecting Shizuko's luggage. One by one, she removes personal items, placing them aside in a box. Only Shizuko's clothing is returned to her. Among the belongings is a small notebook. Shizuko hesitates before quietly asking if she may keep it. Without warning, the counselor slaps her sharply across the face and orders her to follow the rules. Shizuko lowers her head and complies. She is then taken to the dormitory and shown her assigned bed. As she places her things down, she notices an unsettling detail. Her name is already carved into the headboard. For a moment, she runs her fingers over the letters, confused. It is too neat to be a coincidence. Not long after, a cheerful student named Kazue appears at her side. She offers Shizuko a small piece of candy and introduces herself in a friendly manner, telling her not to let the strict staff upset her. Kazue explains that things get easier once you've been here a while. Later that day, Shizuko is brought to an embroidery class to meet the rest of the students. A girl named Kihira welcomes her and helps her catch up with the stitching pattern the others are working on. The rest of the girls glance at her curiously when they hear her name. As evening falls, the students line up to receive their nightly medicine. A liquid they are told is tailored to each girl's physical needs. Shizuko drinks it without hesitation, not noticing the way the counselor watches to make sure every drop is swallowed. After lights out, the sound of footsteps wakes Shizuko. Yuka, the most dominant girl in the dormitory, stands at her bedside and orders her to follow. She leads her to another room where several other girls wait. Yuka mocks her name, throws small stones at her, and pointedly asks if her illness is contagious. Shizuko tries to ignore the insults, but her coughing worsens. She suddenly spits blood onto the floor and collapses to her knees. Kazue rushes in, her voice sharp as she orders the others to leave. She helps Shizuko back to bed, adjusting her blanket. Her expression is calm, but there's tension in her eyes. The next morning, the principal calls Shizuko to her office. She serves her a warm herbal tea and asks if she is settling in. Then she explains that every year, the school holds a competition to select 2 girls to continue their studies in Tokyo. She encourages Shizuko to work hard and aim for the honor. After leaving the office, Shizuko walks across the school grounds. Kihira joins her and mentions something unusual. Another girl with the same name once lived here. She was close to both Yuka and Kazue, but vanished suddenly. The staff said her family took her home due to illness, yet no one ever saw her again. That night, Kazue finds Shizuko and quietly leads her to a hidden storage room in the basement. From a concealed spot beneath an old cloth, she retrieves a notebook and hands it to Shizuko. It is the same notebook that had been taken from her on her first day. But when Shizuko opens it, she sees her own name already written on the first page in neat handwriting. The realization settles over her. This was the old Shizuko's notebook. The next day, the girls gather at the athletic field for jump training, where each one's distance is measured. Yuka and Kazue leap gracefully, both clearing impressive distances. When Shizuko's turn comes, she hesitates at the starting line. Her run is slow, and she fails to clear the jump, drawing a few smirks from the others. Later, during lunch, the principal reminds everyone to take their medicine exactly as instructed. She stresses that the formula for each student is different, preparing prepared for their unique condition. Shizuko swallows her dose, but curiosity lingers in her mind. She quietly asks Kihira more about the previous Shizuko. Before she can finish her question, Kihira's eyes change. Her face tightens, and in an instant, she lunges forward, wrapping both hands around Shizuko's. Shizuko struggles to breathe, clawing at Kihira's wrists. Kazue bursts into the room, pulling Kihira away. Before anyone can react further, Kihira's body jerks violently. Her limbs twist unnaturally, and a strained, choking sound escapes her throat. White foam appears at the corners of her mouth as her bones crack under the strain. Then just as suddenly she collapses. Hours later, Shizuko sees Kihira again in the hallway. She is calm, composed, and speaks as though nothing happened. She remembers none of it. The following morning, Kazue invites Shizuko to walk beyond the school's grounds. They follow a narrow dirt path through the forest until they reach a quiet river. The surface glitters under the light, and Shizuko's eyes widen in awe. She tells Kazue she has never seen a river before. For a while, they simply sit together, listening to the sound of the water. Shizuko coughs once, but there is no blood. She smiles faintly, taking it as a sign her health is improving. Back at the school, another athletic trial is held. When Shizuko's turn comes, she sprints forward and manages to leap farther than she ever has before, landing in third place behind Kazue and Yuka. The improvement is enough to draw stares from the others and a hard, calculating look from Yuka. Over the next days, Shizuko and Kazue spend more time together. Yuka watches them from a distance, her jealousy growing. One afternoon, Shizuko opens her locker and freezes. A dead bird lies on top of her neatly folded clothes. The smell is sharp and foul. She doesn't hesitate. The next morning at breakfast, she walks calmly to Yuka's table and places the bird directly into her bowl of food. No words are exchanged, but the message is clear. That night, Shizuko notices something glinting on the floor near Kazue's bed, a necklace. She reaches for it, but a pale hand shoots out from under the bed and snatches it away. Heart racing, Shizuko bends down to look and comes face to face with a gaunt, sickly girl she recognizes as Iguchi, one of their classmates. The girl's eyes are glassy, her skin damp. Before Shizuko can speak, Iguchi slips back into the shadows beneath the bed. The next morning, the principal gathers the girls and announces that Iguchi's mother came in the night to take her home. Shizuko knows what she saw and feels a deep unease. Later, she tells Kazue about the figure under the bed, but Kazue dismisses it as a night. Soon after, Kihira approaches Shizuko privately. She says she believes her and tells her to check under the stairs. Shizuko hesitates, then goes. In the dim space beneath the steps, she finds another girl in the same strange condition as Iguchi, barely conscious, her breathing shallow. Before she can act, Kihira appears behind her. But something is wrong. Without warning, Kihira grips her own throat and begins choking herself violently. Her body twists, bones snapping audibly. Shizuko stumbles back, then runs to fetch the counselor. By the time they return, both the girl under the stairs and Kihira are gone. The space is empty except for the faint smell of damp air. The counselor tells her that Kihira was transferred to another school earlier that morning. Shizuko keeps her thoughts to herself, but suspicion takes root. She begins to watch the daily routines more closely, noting how the staff never miss a chance to ensure the girls take their medicine. One afternoon in the courtyard, Shizuko sits with Kazue and finally says what's been on her mind. She knows Kazue's kindness comes from seeing her as a replacement for the old Shizuko. She says she doesn't mind being compared, but she resents that Kazue wouldn't care otherwise. Kazue says nothing. Frustrated, Shizuko leaves and runs to the athletic field. Without warning, she sprints and leaps farther than she ever has before, clearing an enormous distance. Breathless, she tells Kazue later that she feels strange inside, as if something is burning. Kazue freezes. Those are the same words the original Shizuko had spoken before she disappeared. Without explaining herself, Kazue turns and walks away. That evening, Shizuko goes to the principal's office and asks to stop the medicine, insisting she no longer feels sick. The principal's expression hardens. She tells Shizuko to return to her room and continue the treatment. The next day, in embroidery class, the principal makes an announcement. She says she has decided on the student most likely to win the Tokyo competition. The room goes still. Everyone expects her to name either Kazue or Yuka, the school's strongest athletes. Instead, she says the name Shizuko. A heavy silence follows. The moment the teachers leave, Yuka stands abruptly and strides toward Shizuko. Without warning, she shoves her against the lockers. Her voice is sharp, accusing Shizuko of stealing her chance to go to Tokyo. She grips Shizuko's hair and slams her head into the locker doors again and again. Shizuko's breathing grows heavy. Her hand clenches into a fist. In one sudden motion, she smashes her bare palm against the locker's glass panel. The glass shatters into jagged shards, but she doesn't flinch. She steps forward, grabs Yuka by the throat, and lifts her completely off the ground. The other girls freeze, watching as Yuka's face reddens. Kazue rushes in, calling her name. Shizuko lets go, and Yuka collapses unconscious to the floor. Kazue's eyes drop to Shizuko's hands. Shards of glass are embedded deep in her skin, but she shows no reaction. Calmly, Shizuko says she cannot feel anything anymore. Kazue's expression changes instantly. She knows the original Shizuko had experienced the same loss of sensation before she vanished. Fear edges into her voice as she demands to know who Shizuko really is. Later, while Kazue rests, Shizuko quietly searches her belongings. Inside Kazue's diary, she finds a page filled entirely with her own name written again and again. On another page, there's a drawing of a large wooden box. The image triggers a memory. She's seen that box before in a storeroom deep in the basement. She slips out and makes her way there. Moments later, Kazue wakes and realizes the diary is open on her bed. She guesses immediately where Shizuko has gone and follows. In the basement, Shizuko stands near the heavy box, examining. Kazue stops at the doorway, frozen by the sight. The memory returns in full. The day the original Shizuko had collapsed here, convulsing and begging for help. She had said her body felt like it was burning inside. Kazue, panicking, had pushed the box in front of her before running to get the counselor. When they returned, the girl was gone, a hole smashed through the wall where she had been. Kazue steps forward and tells Shizuko everything. She admits she believed the school story that the girl was taken home, but she has carried the guilt ever since. Now, both of them know the disappearances are not ordinary. They agree to search for proof. That night, they slip into the principal's office and begin going through drawers. The door opens suddenly. The principal walks in with a Japanese military officer. The girls hide behind a cabinet from their hiding place. They overhear the officer scolding the principal for the slow pace of an experiment and warning her not to lose more subjects. Once the two leave, Shizuko and Kazue move quickly. They find a small safe and unlock it with a key from the desk. Inside are files marked with the names of students and detailed reports on an experimental drug. The documents describe a formula meant to give superhuman strength and endurance. It is unstable, often leading to violent physical reactions and eventual death. One page lists the trial results. Most subjects are marked deceased. One entry stands out, Shizuko's name, noted as the most successful subject so far. Before they can discuss what they've found, the sound of screaming carries in from outside. Shizuko and Kazue rush out of the office, following the sound. They find a crowd of students gathered near a tree. Above them, Yuka is perched on a high branch, swaying unsteadily. Her hair is loose, her clothes disheveled, and her eyes are unfocused. No one can reach her before she suddenly jumps. Her body hits the ground hard. The shock ripples through the group. The principal quickly orders everyone back to their dormitories, her voice sharp with authority. Amid the confusion, Shizuko and Kazue slip away. They head toward the edge of the grounds, moving quickly but staying low to avoid being seen. They push through thick undergrowth until the trees begin to thin. After a long run, they smell something unexpected. Food cooking. The scent of roasted meat drifts through the air. They exchange a glance. If there's food, there might be people who can help. But when they step out from the cover of the trees, their hope vanishes. Ahead is not a village, but a large Japanese military base. Soldiers move in formation, their rifles slung over their shoulders. Before they can retreat, the military officer from earlier emerges from behind a supply truck. Soldiers close in on both sides. The girls turn to run, but the officer raises his pistol and fires. The shot strikes Shizuko in the back. She stumbles, but he smirks, saying the drug in her system will heal the wound. Kazue lunges at one of the soldiers, but she is quickly restrained. Shizuko is seized and dragged toward the officer, who orders her return to the school. Back inside the facility, the principal meets them with a strained smile. The officer delivers Shizuko to her, then steps aside. The principal directs her assistant to prepare another injection, saying it will further strengthen Shizuko's body. Meanwhile, Kazue regains consciousness in the principal's office. It's empty. She notices the principal's desk drawer is slightly ajar and finds a small pistol inside. Tucking it away, she slips into the hallway, keeping to the shadows as she searches for Shizuko. But she doesn't get far. Turning a corner, she comes face to face with the officer. He strikes her across the face, knocking her to the floor, and drags her to a large chamber deep within the building. At the center is a tall cylindrical tank made of reinforced glass. He forces Kazue inside and seals the door. Water begins pouring in from the top, rising steadily. The officer watches for a moment, then leaves. Kazue pounds on the glass, her shouts muffled and unheard. The water reaches her waist, then her chest. She gasps for breath, pressing her palms against the glass, but the soundproof tank swallows every cry. Shizuko lies on a narrow bed in a dim laboratory. The latest injection burns through her veins, leaving her disoriented. Her breathing is uneven, but the strength in her limbs begins to return. For a moment, she sits still, listening. Faint mechanical hums echo through the walls. She forces herself to stand and follows the sound into a long corridor. At the end, she pushes open a heavy door and freezes. Inside the chamber are multiple glass tanks filled with cloudy liquid. Suspended in each is the body of a girl she recognizes, the ones who had transferred or gone home. Their eyes are closed, their skin pale. In one tank, Kazue floats upright, her body pressed against the glass, water rushing in around. Shizuko runs to the control panel, but finds it locked. She strikes the glass with her fists, but it doesn't yield. Her voice breaks as she calls Kazue's name, but the tank remains silent. Elsewhere, the officer confronts the principal in her office. He informs her that the military is seizing control of the experiment. She will no longer have any authority. The assistant steps forward, revealing her loyalty to the officer, and slaps the principal across the face. Soldiers begin collecting files and destroying equipment. Back in the tank chamber, Shizuko's grief shifts into fury. She grips the edge of a steel door and rips it from its hinges. Soldiers rush in, rifles raised, but she hurls the door into them, knocking several to the ground. They fire, bullets tearing through the air, but she charges forward, striking with impossible strength. One by one, they fall. In another hall, the surviving girls awaken from sedation. The drug in their systems has amplified their aggression. Their eyes are wide, movements erratic. When they see the assistant enter, they attack without hesitation, dragging her to the ground and killing her with their bare hands. The principal flees toward her office and snatches the telephone receiver, trying to reach the Japanese government. Shizuko finds her before she can finish the call. She seizes the woman by the front of her coat and slams her into the wall. "Why did you do this to your own students?" Shizuko demands, her voice low and steady. "Were they really that disposable to you?" The principal's answer is a sneer. She pulls a pistol from her desk and fires. The shot strikes the glass of Kazue's tank instead, sending cracks racing across its surface. The glass bursts and water floods onto the floor. Kazue's limp body collapses in front of Shizuko. The sight stills her completely. Then she steps forward, grabs the principal by both arms, and drives her backward onto a metal spike protruding from a wall. The principal's scream cuts short. Morning comes to a shattered building. The hallways are littered with bodies, the air thick with smoke and silence. Only a few girls remain alive, wandering aimlessly in shock. Shizuko sits on the floor, Kazue's head resting in her lap. Her voice softens to a whisper. "Now we can go home." She closes her eyes, her breathing slowing, until she is still beside her friend.